Good afternoon, everybody. Just letting all the people filter in. We'll start in just a couple minutes. Thank you for joining us promptly. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think we can go ahead and get started. I think people are still trickling in, but this webinar is being recorded, as you probably got the warning. So if you feel like you need to miss the first, if you feel like you need to catch up on the first minute or two, the recording will be available. Thank you all for joining us, and welcome to the second in the Safe Routes Partnerships webinars for ATP Cycle 6. My name is Jonathan Matz. I'm California's Senior Policy Manager for the Safe Routes Partnership. We're happy to be bringing this webinar to you. It's the second in a series of 3. We'll be getting to what our plans are for the last one towards the end. Also, welcome to those of you who may be joining us from outside California. We thought that even though the kind of framing of this webinar is specifically about questions involving non-infrastructure for California's active transportation program application, really the insight that our panelists have, is relevant for anybody who's a practitioner anywhere in the country. So welcome if you're joining us from outside of California as well. A little bit about us and what we do. If you're here, you're probably on our email list at some point. But again, this Safe Routes Partnership is a nonprofit organization that advances safe walking and bicycling to and from schools and improves the health of kids of all races, income levels, and abilities, fostering the creation of healthy communities for everyone. As I mentioned before, this is the second in our 3-part ATP Cycle 6 webinar series. We're now doing these webinar series every ATP cycle. We did our first series 2 years ago in Cycle 5. And really the goal is, particularly for under-resourced and previously unsuccessful applicants to the ATP, to unlock some tips towards improving their application and making it more competitive in what's a very, very competitive program. To that end, we also provide other resources, including a guide to the application process, which we first published in 2018 and which is currently being edited, updated for Cycle 6. That'll be published right after the guidelines are officially approved in mid-March. So be on the lookout for that. And there will be one more of these webinar series. Usually what we do, and that'll continue this cycle as well, is just hold the last one in April or May, about a month or two ahead of the application deadline, just with a kind of a quick overview of all of the changes, both small and large, that might have happened to the ATP guidelines and eligibility and some of the questions in the application. particularly for repeat applicants who just want to make sure that they catch anything that might have changed since the last time they applied, and they can be on the lookout for that. So stay tuned for an announcement about that last one sometime in April or May. A little bit about ATP Cycle 6 and the ATP more generally. There are 5 categories of application types. You can apply to do a plan, you can apply for standalone non-infrastructure, and then 3 sizes of infrastructure applications based on the total project cost. These numbers here are the most recent updated thresholds for Cycle 6, so they've changed a little bit since last time. And as you may know as well, you can combine an infrastructure application with a non-infrastructure component. And then finally, there's also a quick build pilot program, which is a little bit of a set aside, $7 million, I believe it is, specifically for kind of rapid installation projects. We're going to talk today about a point in the questions about non-infrastructure programs that the ATP has asked for a number of cycles now, both in the standalone non-infrastructure application and in the combined infrastructure, non-infrastructure applications. And that has to do with the sustainability of your non-infrastructure program beyond the funding horizon of an ATP grant itself. And in previous cycles, there wasn't necessarily that extensive explanation either from the application or the scoring rubric, the scoring rubrics released about exactly what applicants were being asked to explain in that question. And so that is going to be changed a little bit this cycle. There's going to be a little bit more clarity about it. And so we've gathered together the panelists who I'll introduce you to in a second to give feedback in their experiences, both as evaluators, as applicants, and practitioners about thinking about sustainability of non-infrastructure programs generally, particularly if they're tied to a finite funding cycle. We'll also try to wrap it. We'll try to point to the ATP application specifically, but as I mentioned before, it should be hopefully relevant to practitioners outside California as well. So a few things that we want to touch on, really focusing on volunteer leadership that can take the reins after staffing may not be able to continue, the local organizations that can also become a consistent part of your non-infrastructure projects for the long term, and focusing on parent-student groups and how to really embed them into school culture such that they're hopefully not completely staff reliant over the long-term future. This, as I mentioned before, is a little bit of the expanded language in the non-infrastructure guidance and ATP application that's going to be put forward this cycle. So as mentioned before, really trying to help applicants think a little bit more specifically about how they want to answer this question. This language is due to be finalized after the March 15th meeting, but I think it can be assumed to be consistent, this is going to be where we're going to be going with going forward. So as you can see, really looking at investing not only in activities and materials, but also in people and in knowledge to keep programs going. A little bit about our presenters. We have 3. I'll start off first with Victoria Custodio from the Department of Public Health and the Active Transportation Research Center, where she's Senior Health Education Consultant in the Department of Public Health's Active Transportation Safety Program. She's currently serving in her 7th year at the ATRC's non-infrastructure technical assistance team and is in her 11th year of supporting active transportation and safe routes to school programs through the state's health department. Her enthusiasm for walking and bicycling is rooted in her commitment to supporting safe, healthy, and vibrant communities for all. Next, we have Rachel Paras, who is the Associate Director of the Alameda County Public Health Department's Nutrition Services Program, where she oversees the Active Communities Initiative and the Safe Routes to School Active Transportation Program in partnership. Rachel also coordinates and provides guidance for youth-focused work, such as a local school district partnership, which leads youth participatory action research projects, as well as supports place-based, community-driven efforts like the burgeoning Safe Routes Active Transportation projects in the Ashland-Cherryland unincorporated area of Alameda County. She is the parent of an active middle schooler and college-age future kinesiologist and wife to a creative director. She appreciates weekend hikes, meditates daily, and practices Pilates. She studied at UC Berkeley and obtained a master's in public administration from USC and is a proud Filipinx American resident of Alameda County. Finally, Brittany Lobo is a health program manager for the Sonoma County Department of Health Services, currently overseeing home visiting programs. Brittany was formerly the supervisor of the Healthy Eating Active Living Unit, and she has experience implementing Safe Routes to School programs, including a high school program with a youth leadership curriculum, and successfully brought Caltrans funding for a Vision Zero project to Sonoma County. She's a strong advocate for social justice, health equity, and building healthy environments for all, where the healthy choice is the easy choice. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Custodio, just a little bit of housekeeping. We're happy to see you guys all in the chat, and please keep that going. If you have questions specifically for the panelists or related to any of the content that you see, please put those in the Q&A. If there's something you specifically want us to address, so we can sort out all of the feedback as we go along, and we'll take questions after all presenters have gone. So with that, I'm going to stop share and invite Victoria to start.
Okay, great. So I am going to share my screen and just ask for a thumbs up if you can hear me. Thank you, you guys. All right, really appreciate it. All right, thank you to the partnership for inviting the Active Transportation Resource Center to present today. We are very happy to be part of this conversation and share our knowledge and experience with all of you today. All right, I'm just going to make sure I can advance through my keyboard, which is an old one. All right, for those of you who aren't familiar with the ATRC, we're a project funded by California's Active Transportation Program and administered and managed by Caltrans. The Active Transportation Resource Center team involves a number of different state, university, and consulting partners who support California's local agency ATP needs through technical assistance, training, and resources. We're motivated by our desire to help California meet its long-term transportation, sustainability, health, safety, and equity goals. And we're all about getting more people to be able to safely walk and bike and roll. So please be sure to visit our website when you get a chance. All right. So before I launch into my presentation, which is the 5 ways that we're recommending that non-infrastructure programs think about sustainability, I wanted to pause and first recognize with this slide that program sustainability really can often mean different things to different people in different contexts or disciplines. So for many, program sustainability is about continuing programs and services past funding timelines. And along those lines, program sustainability can be treated as an indicator by program funders to help evaluate potential returns on investment. So this is the case, as Jonathan mentioned, for California's ATP program, which favors projects that can demonstrate that project tasks and activities will be sustainable past the life of the ATP funding it has. So that all said, for others, and we did do some prep work before coming together for this webinar, and there are 3 of us who are trained in public health. For those of us who are trained that way, program sustainability is really marked by demonstrated commitments to collaboration. And those collaborations are really commitments to meeting communities' longer term goals. So that's how we think about program sustainability. And this also reflects forethought in anticipation of future needs that, you know, might emerge due to conditions that we know. In public health, we think about an iceberg kind of melting and how we all might need to wear different hats to meet kind of the changing environments that we're under. So sustainability really kind of reaches into those realms. All right. So, so just given these different perspectives today, I'm going to share the ATRC's 5 ways to plan for non-infrastructure program sustainability, which we developed as a result of ongoing discussions with ATP stakeholders, including the partnership. In putting together this presentation, we consulted existing resources and guidance, and actually Jonathan showed this earlier, this information has been used to inform new prompts in the ATP Cycle 6 application questions, and specifically, how will the proposed non-infrastructure program be sustained after completion? And then lastly, I just wanted to make the point that these 5 ways are to be taken as suggestions and considerations of emerging and best practice. They're not necessarily requirements of the selected ATP non-infrastructure program recipients, but really food for thought. All right, so what's the first way that our team thinks you can plan for sustainability? So first, we recommend that you establish a work group that really can take on the charge of developing and implementing a program sustainability plan that would be done in parallel to your project implementation. So as we all know, plans are a great way at giving groups a way to establish tasks and timelines that are needed for program sustainability. And of course, you want to make sure that you have those most invested in your program helping at the table to develop and implement that plan. And then as you get started, you might want to consult one of the helpful guides or resources that I'll be sharing at the end of this presentation. Okay, so you've got your work group, you've got a plan of attack. So our second recommendation is to evaluate each unique program activity in your project for potential sustainability. So we see at the state level that many active transportation non-infrastructure projects are very multifaceted, combining different elements: education, encouragement, pre-engineering, evaluation, activities. So it's really important to be ready to easily communicate what each component of your comprehensive program is accomplishing. You could speak to why it's vital and what could be lost without being able to maintain that activity. So sustainability is tied to program evaluation, and keeping track of the impact of distinct program components is important to determining if and how each could then be sustained either by the current host agency or organization, or potentially a new partner. And Jonathan mentioned, the community itself. So with that as a guide, I think it's really also vital to make sure that you're able to communicate easily to your partners, both existing and potential partners, what those benefits are, and roll that into whatever kinds of communication or marketing efforts you're planning to do with your program. All right, so it's a lot of content, and this next point, researching and engaging with future program funders, is a topic in and of itself, that could take over an entire other webinar. So given the limited time here, and I think what I'm going to just summarize and say that it's important for program sustainability to research and engage with future funders so that they can be open, so you can be open to different funding opportunities. I believe that we can, discuss a little bit more of what this could look like, and Brittany and Rachel will speak to what's happening in the respective counties. But if you're not really aware of kind of the different streams are out there, there's lots of resources that you can help direct you to what could possibly be another source of funding. And both the Active Transportation Resource Center and the Safe Routes Partnership have these funding references available. So we'll put those links out to you guys. All right. So I'm on the 4th of 5, and I forgot to start my timer. So Jonathan, please let me know if I'm doing okay. Okay, good. Seeing the shake. So this really gets to the goals that Jonathan highlighted earlier, and as a public health educator, this is definitely my favorite of the recommendations to sustain non-infrastructure sustainability. To sustain non-infrastructure programming. So this is about training community members to lead and continue efforts that are really aimed at improving livability and health and social cohesion in their, where folks reside and live and work and play. So one of the clearest examples of sustainable active transportation education and encouragement programs is community-focused train the trainer programs. Training the trainer means providing proper preparation to those who can then go on to train and instruct other people. So we have great examples of this happening already within the ATP, and they're nice models to look at if you want more information on how these types of efforts can be implemented. So just put a few here that we can circle back to that focus on training community ambassadors for pedestrian safety, for training certified instructors for bike safety, either group rides or skills training, or and then the partnership and CDPH actually, while we were our former iteration of the Active Transportation Resource Center, put together some resources on walking school buses and bike trains that can be used to help host community trainings for parents, residents, other volunteer groups who might want to engage in walking school bus and bike train leadership. All right, next slide. Oops, saying except myself. All right, finally, the fifth recommendation, this is our last one, for ways to plan for sustainability is to ensure that any procured equipment from your project continues to be accessible following the funding for your project. So this again means that you want to determine the needs for storage, maintenance, sharing, and any possible liability associated with sharing. Again, we do have some models that at the EDRC that you can look to help with planning in this area. And of course, we're available to speak about our experiences with equipment sharing. All right, I mentioned that some guides helped to inform our own recommendations. So these are links to a few of the guides that we found to be really helpful. I'm sure the partnership will get them out to you. And I believe my colleague Judy is going to be sharing some links in the chat. And then I also, just a plug for the Active Transportation Resource Center, you might want to check out our article on program sustainability in our latest newsletter, which is on our website, and the link is there, and Judy's also going to share that out. All right, so that is the end of my presentation. I look forward to being part of the upcoming discussion. On behalf of our entire Active Transportation Resource Center team, I want to say thank you again to the partnership for inviting us to present today, and we look forward to being part of the next, being part of the Q&A. And if you would like to get in touch with us with any questions, please feel to contact us here. This is our team's information and our website again. All right, so that's it. I hope we did well with time. And Jonathan, all right.
Victoria. I'll hand it off to Brittany now.
All right, thank you so much, Victoria. And let's see. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. So as Jonathan mentioned, I'm Brittany Lobo. I work for the Sonoma County Department of Health Services. We have been involved with some active transportation programs for a number of years, both collaborating with community members as well as with community-based organizations to implement safe routes to school and now Vision Zero planning efforts. The example that I'm going to talk about today is from a community called Moreland, which is in Southwest Santa Rosa. Sonoma County is a urban rural county, we like to call it, or an urban agricultural county. Santa Rosa is our largest city, about 180,000 residents. And there are still some pockets of unincorporated areas that are fairly densely populated within the sort of right at the edges of the city of Santa Rosa, and Moreland is one of those neighborhoods. So one way, and just piggybacking off of what Victoria was talking about around work groups, one way that we found really helped with our planning for our non-infrastructure application for this particular project was involving the community and community-based participatory research from the very beginning. Before we even thought about applying for ATP, actually, we were engaged in community-based participatory research with this particular neighborhood, talking with them about what they needed and what would make their community safer and healthier for everybody who lived there. So that planning process started in 2014. And one of the things that came out of that process was a healthy neighborhood plan, which actually highlighted the need for a Safe Routes to School program. So I'm just going to put a link to the document in the chat. You can take a look at it if you want to later. It has a lot of details about the process that we did with the community and some of the results that came out of that. But we really used this process to help establish and create a neighborhood advisory team in Moreland. So the Moreland Neighborhood Advisory Team, or the NAT as we call them, they're still up and running today after almost 10 years after we started this community-based participatory research project with them. And they're still agitating for ATP. So I've been involved now in 2 cycles of ATP applications for this particular project, and will likely be involved in a 3rd round for the cycle 6 application if we don't get funded by the augmentation process. So our application just barely missed out on the cycle 5 funding, unfortunately. But the process that we undergo with community is really about sitting with community, talking with them in the space that they live, in the space that they inhabit, and listening to them around their vision and their goals, and then helping to identify strategies that we can use to meet those goals and prioritizing those strategies. And there's a whole methodology that's actually explained in the document that I linked, and you can take a look at that. But we go through an iterative process with community members and really get their buy-in to demonstrate that they are interested in these solutions, that this is something that the community is asking for. And it's much more likely that community members are going to be involved in sustaining a program if it's something that they identified as a top priority for their own communities from the outset. That might seem obvious, but it's not something that we always take into account. During our actual ATP application process and our community engagement process as part of this project, we asked a lot of questions. We did a lot of surveys. We went to some back to school nights. We hosted some virtual meetings. We were, getting our application ready during the pandemic. So we went to some Zoom workshops. And what we really were asking for from the community was, what is their input? What is their opinion about what is going to affect their child's ability to walk and bike to school? And also ask for volunteers. And I think it's really compelling in an application scenario to be able to say that you have 18 actual human beings who raised their hand and said, yes, I would like to do that. I am interested in signing up to be part of this program. It demonstrates that there's interest and passion within the community and people who are willing to volunteer to be part of a walk and bike to school day, or organizing a neighborhood walking school bus or a bike train, and helping to organize some of the components of a Safe Routes to School program. This was the first time that we tried to design a non-infrastructure program really around the community and around training community members and school staff to really run the program and own the program with some technical assistance from our Bike Coalition here in Sonoma County, which is the organization that runs most of our Safe Routes to School programming here. So our wonderful principal, Nina Craig at the elementary school, was very enthusiastic about this program from the start and has been interested in Safe Routes to School for a very long time. This particular project proposed creating a new walking path through a sort of rural industrial neighborhood that would allow students to walk or bike to school and cut the distance by about a half a mile, which is really significant for elementary school students, to just 1 mile down. So we identified these volunteers, as I mentioned, and we wrote into the non-infrastructure work plan the identification and training of community Safe Routes to School liaisons, the incorporation of activities into the school day. So I met with teachers during teacher work days and during staff meetings to talk to them about different ways that they could incorporate these kinds of activities into their actual classroom activities and into their school day, so that it's something that can be institutionalized at the school level. So these really kind of granular details can be really important in fleshing out your non-infrastructure work plan when it comes to the time to really submit that application and talk about, here are the concrete actions that we're going to take. And these are the people who are behind us and who have said, yes, we want to do that. Requesting technical support from local organizations. The training programs that Victoria mentioned are great. It's also great to partner up with your local bike coalition or with organizations that are already implementing Safe Routes to School or doing safe bike trainings or family bike workshops or things like that, to really pull them in as trainers to get that train the trainer model going. The health department really is big on train the trainer models. So I guess that was my last slide, but yeah, I think sustainability really it starts long before you even get the idea of what you want to do for non-infrastructure, because you really have to be able to plan it out, like Victoria said, and you have to be able to demonstrate that the community is here for it and will stay here for it for many years to come, even after the initial funding for training and for implementation of certain elements has gone away. The more you can plan to institutionalize those elements, the better, the longer your program will last. So I'll put my email in the chat and stop here.
Thank you, Brittany. And last but not least, we have Rachel.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thanks, Brittany. I see you there. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I am Rachel Padas with the Alameda County Public Health Department Nutrition Services Program. And I'm here to talk about our non-infrastructure component called Eden on the Move. And it's actually a partnership with the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District. I'll share a little bit about that in a moment. Let's see. So just for context for folks throughout the state or others who may be listening outside of California, we are about 1.6 million residents. We are in 5 supervisorial districts. We are in 14 incorporated cities and 6 unincorporated communities in rural areas throughout 813 square miles, rich in diversity, cultural heritage, history, and language. And this is our vision and mission of nutrition services. One thing I'll say about our program is that we're small and mighty for such a large county with a team of 14. And we are only able to accomplish our vision and mission through partnership with residents and community organizations to accomplish our goals. And one of them, as Jonathan mentioned, is active communities. We value and embrace the broader view of healthy living, which includes equitable access to nutrition education and physical activity for overall health and obesity prevention. And this Active Communities initiative supports this value, as we know that the benefit of eating well and physical activity on one's mental health and well-being is immense. And research shows that a link between what we eat and movement and how we feel are congruent with each other. So this thoughtful approach allows purposeful action towards a healthy mindset and ultimately healthy living. What's pictured here are some examples. On the left is a current active transportation program that we are funded for in Oakland, which has been, I guess, applied for and then sustained and maintained through innovation and expansion over a few cycles. And a couple of the other pieces that you see are community engaged marketing results. This is also an example of our Wellness-Minded Partners, what we do with physical activity for children and partnerships with a neighborhood youth center in the Ashland-Cherryland area. Whoops, apologies about that. These had videos from an earlier session. But that brings me to Eden on the Move. Eden on the Move is focused on a particular unincorporated area of Alameda County that does have significant health disparities. Residents have continually identified issues such as safe places to walk and needs and places for physical activity. And what you see here is a stretch of a creekway. So Eden on the Move is the Safe Routes non-infrastructure component of a combined infrastructure and non-infrastructure large project. You see the circles that are one of the local assets, which are the schools along this creekway. And the goal of this program ultimately is to activate the creekway through the programs that we are proposed. We actually have not received funding for this. However, we were on the cusp of receiving funding, and we hope that this coming cycle will be able to see this come to life. But you can see again that these schools are key anchors to part of what we hope to achieve over the next cycle. And like Brittany said, sustainability cannot happen without kind of planning ahead and engagement beforehand. And this is what we've done intentionally, engaging in the present moment through having dynamic teams who've been working, one on the infrastructure component, but also on the non-infrastructure end. And by stakeholder, it's everyone from local school districts to a local youth center to community organizations, neighborhood associations, and local government partners. Without their engagement, we definitely would not be able to identify the key components of the project that we are proposing. And each of our organizations independently have our own infrastructure. We all have history of working together in the community for a number of years, which has helped us partner together to work on Eden on the Move. So what our project initiates is a community-wide Safe Routes to School program. And as you've heard already, it's definitely through partnerships and collaborations that make this sustainable and doable. We are all part of what's called the Ashland-Cherryland Healthy Communities Collaborative, and a particular focus area is called the Healthy Living Bucket. So the partners in this grant are all part of that and are active already in some of the elements of this program. There's ongoing opportunities to support each other in our different and respective program elements. And then together and independently, we are all looking for opportunities on how to continue to fund our work. Some of those include what you see here: impact fees, local control accountability plans, and making sure that we are including Safe Routes to School programming in our own strategic plans. So there's been some commitment as well for long-term sustainability via future funding of positions such as a full-time coordinator to continue some site-specific planning and a bike share program that we are proposing in this Eden on the Move. In terms of the student-run after-school bike lending program, this is another component that we're really excited about. through our partnerships with the school district, with the Recreation and Park District, and within public health. We're hoping to have the staff collect an inventory of working bicycles of different sizes and abilities, and continue this program through ongoing community donations, hoping that eventually we'll be able to have some fees charged to community to help keep this program sustained. And similar to what Brittany described as the community-based action research project, we do have a component which is the youth participatory action research project. And within this process, sustainability is already built in. So the young people are charged with identifying an active transportation issue in their neighborhood that they are finding is important and relevant to their community. They in turn do their own assessment and will report out their findings. Part of that report out is to key community stakeholders and how the program and their findings can actually be actionable and implemented. Just from where the young people sit, they have peer groups already within their school districts who can help sustain and maintain the projects that they identify, and they themselves learn and build skills along the way. So again, it's part of what I believe Victoria had mentioned about train the trainer. The young people are learning this skill set themselves, and hopefully again become active members in their communities, even while a student or after they graduate. This is just some contact information for our program, and definitely a shout out to HARD, Michael Williams, you may be on the call, and folks who have helped us with the design and proposal for Eden on the Move. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you, Rachel. And just wanted, whoops, sorry about that. Wanted to also put my contact information here, where it looks like we're running a bit ahead of schedule, but wanted to open up to Q&A at the moment, and I can maybe start. I've got a couple in here. One is about sharing the chat, because I know a lot of links have gone out on that, and I haven't read through the whole thing, but I imagine that there's probably, I would imagine that we should be able to save this. Again, I'll just kind of take a look and make sure that it's all, there's no personal information maybe that we wouldn't want to share on our website. But I should think we should be able to save the chat to answer that question. And then we got another one. It came in, Victoria, while you were presenting. The question, so I imagine it was targeted towards the content of your presentation, and I'm not quite sure exactly what it was referenced to, but the question is: Are community members paid for the walking and biking groups? So I'm not sure if you want to take that one. I can also chime in perhaps as well.
Sure. Yeah, and again, I'll just say this is, coming from the ATP, considering the active transportation program and our, the considerations for funding. I think in the context of training community members for to be, say, future instructors, I believe that community members can be compensated for their time for participating in the trainings, and then also for their leadership roles. There are, I think, some considerations in terms of how you're able to keep an accounting of fees paid to community members, but yes, we have seen community members paid for instructing or leading walking and bicycling groups. So, but that's different from paying community members to just participate. There has to kind of be a specialized role for those individuals.
Thanks. That's essentially how I was going to answer it. So much. I don't think I have anything in addition to that. I don't see any other questions here. So last call. But as those come in, I'll mention before, you'll see on the screen now my contact information. Please, if you have any questions about the ATP generally, if you're interested in our technical assistance next time around, please do shoot me a note. And in general, at the California website, we have lots of ATP resources there. As I mentioned, recordings of all of the webinars that we're doing, the guide, which again, as I mentioned before, will be updated in a couple weeks, going live there. And so if there aren't further questions, and I see most of them just revolve around links to participatory action research project. Brittany, is that in your slides? I believe a link to that project, if that's, I believe that's a reference to something that
it's Rachel did the youth participatory action. Ours was more community-based, not focused solely on youth, but Rachel's program was focused on youth.
Oh, it was about Rachel, okay.
I can include, if not now, a link to the model.
Perfect, thank you. So those will all be accumulated in the on the files that are posted to our website, including with a recording of this webinar within the next day or two. So if there is nothing else, I believe we can wrap it up early. And wanted to thank all of our panelists again for joining us. I see there's still, I think, a little bit of back and forth in the chat going on. So maybe keep that open just a minute or two longer. But once again, thanks for joining us. Please get in contact if you have any questions about the ATP generally. We wish you the best of success if in fact you're preparing an application this cycle. And once again, thank you so much for our panelists. We're also keeping our fingers crossed on that augmentation second go around this time around, and hoping that no late game negotiations get in the way of that. But I'm cautiously optimistic. So thanks again for that. And we will see you on our next webinar. Please stay tuned for an announcement of the exact date of that. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat, Charles, about creating buses and trains in communities without sidewalks. The Moreland project did not include sidewalks in some of the pieces of the walking path. So I'd be happy to talk to you about what we did in that community in terms of setting up a sort of a buffered walking path that was not a full sidewalk, but was a very low traffic pathway without a formal sidewalk and gutters.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for catching that. Okay.
Yeah, one more. Jim Bottles has asked, how long is sustain successful? Is it how long are you defining sustaining? I'm not sure of the question exactly.
I think it's a follow-up on the previous question, right? Stats on successfully sustained programs, what works and what does it mean to sustain a program successfully? How long is that? I think that's a great question that I don't have an answer for.
Yeah, I mean, for the purposes of the ATP, if that's specifically what we're asking for, there isn't a specific number of years or anything like that, which is asked of applicants. So I mean, as the the presenters have mentioned, I'd say it really comes down to, really taking the opportunity to sort of embed these kinds of activities as part of the neighborhood and school life, if it's a school project. I'm not sure if there's a kind of a short, like a number that anybody can throw out to say, if you make it to this point, you've sustained it. And if not, then you haven't. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Jim, or if you want to clarify a little bit more what you were trying to get at.
Well, I'll try to weigh in a little bit, unless you're opening up a phone or something. Yeah, I was going to say, so Jonathan's on an advisory committee to the ATP program as well. And I think one of the issues everyone's been wrestling with is the benefit, cost model, and how to look at non-infrastructure programs in light of kind of in comparison or, against infrastructures, which usually have a much longer life, right? So they're more costly to build. It's, we're making improvements to the built environment, which is essential to supporting safety and comfort, and, allowing for that all ages and ability to really get out there and be active. But it also comes with a higher price tag. So I think, in general, the thought is a lot of infrastructure projects have a longer life because they've been built to last. And so in terms of treating non-infrastructure as an investment that could be, that's considered in terms of this, in this competitive light, I think it has been questionable, what's the length of a sustainable program. But, for me, I think a lot of this work is, it's much lower cost, but it has tremendous value in terms of like creating the buy-in that's necessary to really have, important or the kind of quality community engagement that we know creates lasting change. So I think, that's not an easy way to, or, I probably didn't answer Jim's question with like a number, but I really just think, I think kind of what you put into it is what you get out of it. And, that's the focus that we want to see, I think with the non-infrastructure side. So.
Agreed. And, it creates a constituency for your more improvements in other parts of the community as well, really going forward, and sort of serves as a model for, again, if we're only looking at it through the ATP context, as a model for sort of subsequent ATP applications in different parts of your community, if your community is, large enough to really need multiple ATP applications. And Jim, you also put in the question there, if we ask for money back, I'm not sure who you're asking would ask for money back. If you're asking if the Transportation Commission asked for ATP money back, it wasn't exactly clear what your question was. It says you ask for money back if it only lasts a year. No, if the program is implemented, and that there are reporting requirements to the Transportation Commission for the implementation of an infrastructure project and the non-infrastructure project. And, you'll report back, and we did these programs and we spent the money this way. And then after that, no, there isn't a check to see if it's still going on after the funding horizon has left, which is actually an interesting, it would be an interesting research project. But at that point, Caltrans and the local assistance department is a little bit out of the picture at that point. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Can I say one last thing? Because I think, Rachel and Brittany both presented some really great models of what's happening in the local health department. So I just want to put in a plug for engaging your local public health department in your efforts. And of course, with the deadline or the release call for projects for Cycle 6 coming up, most local health departments are going to be swamped with their efforts to move forward their current applications. But if you're not already engaged, I really highly recommend you trying to figure out like what are the committees that are active. I think there's just, you know, it's really an efficient way to kind of be a part of something that's already building and working towards the health of the community. So I'll put that plug in for my partners at the local level.
Can I just echo that too? In some jurisdictions, you may be going through your general plan developments at this point. And in this unincorporated area, we are undergoing environmental justice planning right now, which has broadened their definition of what that means to include things like open space and safe routes. So that's an opportunity to really get in there and let folks know what you need in your community.
Yep, agreed.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We're 5 minutes to the hour, so wrapping up right on time. And thanks for sticking with us, to our panelists, and looking forward to seeing you at our next one. Have a great rest of the afternoon, everybody.
Thank you so much.